I researched generalized anxiety disorder. So, generalized anxiety disorder is a disorder where people are constantly worrying about different situations, and most of these situations are ones that they either shouldn't be worried about or they're too worried about. Most people who suffer from generalized anxiety disorder also have other symptoms, including restlessness, muscle tension, trouble sleeping, and often have a hard time concentrating. This hard time concentrating also causes the mind to go blank. People with this disorder also, if the condition is severe enough, it affects their everyday function. It affects about 3 to 5% of the population, and it affects both children and adults. The most common time where someone develops this disorder is between childhood and middle age. Often, it's caused by genetic factors and the person's environment, but one of the things about this disorder is it's not a specific moment where this disorder is developed. It usually runs in the family if there's a family member that might have depression or generalized anxiety disorder or something along those lines. More often, it's found in females than in males. The general criteria for this is if a person is worrying over a 6-month period more days than they're not worried about it, so that would be 90 or more days out of the 180 days is considered anxiety. Before the 1980s, it wasn't recognized as an illness, but now it's recognized and there's ways to treat it. This is a video of someone who has generalized anxiety disorder, and she talks about how it affects her and how she deals with it.
I would worry about things, I'd be concerned about things, and I was just stuck, kind of, my tires were spinning and I wasn't getting anywhere. Those worries really kind of took on a life of their own. Things that would be a minor stressor for someone would really, really affect me, and I couldn't kind of get over it. It was more like just a prisoner to these worries and these thoughts. And I didn't necessarily know to give it a name, that it was an anxiety disorder, that I was struggling with anxiety, that there was something that could be done about it. I thought that was just life and how life was, and I just wasn't as good at coping with it as other people. My name is Tasha, and I have generalized anxiety disorder.
Generalized anxiety disorder is a condition where people are really dealing with lots of intense worry that really interferes with their day-to-day functioning. Most people with generalized anxiety disorder worry about a number of different themes. They might be worried about financial difficulties. They might be worried about bad things happening in the future. Often a focus is worry about health or safety of family members or loved ones.
I had some very specific concerns about my little brother's health. I had a younger brother, and I was always imagining and worrying about him getting hurt or being killed, and all these elaborate stories in my head that I used to run through. And you get stuck. The worry it takes over. You're prisoner to the worry. It's hard to even have a conversation with someone about anything other than what you're worried about. It really just kind of comes in like a poison and just takes over everything.
The process for working on generalized anxiety disorder, there's sort of two main ways we can go about tackling this problem. One is using medication approaches, and the other is using psychological treatments. Probably the principal way that we work on generalized anxiety disorder is what's called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. And what that involves is learning more about what anxiety is, learning more about how the worry develops, understanding what the thinking patterns are, and learning how to shift those. So that might mean things like looking at your worrying style. Is it productive worrying versus unproductive worrying? If it's unproductive worrying, how can we move that towards a more problem-solving focus? We also really encourage people to work on facing their worries in a realistic way, because that can help reduce the fear that's associated with the worrying.
Until I learned the techniques to relax and to overcome and address it and challenge those thinking, I was stuck. I was paralyzed. I wasn't able to make any change. And once I learned them, the first thing is I can identify when I'm doing it. Well, you know what? I've been thinking about this for a while. I've been worried about it. What have I done about it? First thing I do, I relax my body. I calm down. I look and do my breathing, and then I start and I open up and I talk to someone about it. What I would encourage people to do is don't be alone in this. Don't think that life has to be anxious, that life has to be all about worry, and that it's somehow something wrong with you, that's, that this is the life you have to lead. It's so easy to treat anxiety disorders, and it's so empowering to learn those tools and get that knowledge. The choice to focus on reality and things that are going to happen and not get carried away by that worry, that choice is opened up once you have the tools to deal with anxiety. And live each day and not let the worries take over.
So how this disorder is treated is through cognitive behavioral therapy, like mentioned in the video. It helps people deal with their anxieties, find ways to calm down when they are excessively worrying. It also helps them to find ways to change those thoughts. Medication is also sometimes prescribed. Other ways of treating it, there are support groups that people can go to, and sometimes that would help talking to other people who understand what you're going through, because they're going through the same thing. Anxiety management, also like learning different ways to deal with their anxiety. Sometimes not one of these is the answer. Sometimes it's a combination of cognitive behavior therapy and medication, or a combination of one of the others. Medication helps in the short term, and some of the other treatments, such as the therapy and the support groups, can help a person in the long term to deal with their anxiety. And this is my works cited page.